Hello and welcome to the Modern Day Pioneer podcast. This is a sacred space set aside for healing, truth-telling, and reclaiming your voice. I'm Kendi, the host of this podcast, and I am also a mother, intuitive, entrepreneur, and a survivor turned thriver. Together, we're going to explore stories of resilience, confront the shadows of our past, and embrace the healing power of living with purpose. Welcome to this podcast. This is now episode number 2, and I am thrilled to be in this space and want to say thank you so much for the outpouring of love that I have received since launching this podcast. I'm not going to lie, this is definitely putting me into a space that is giving me the opportunity to grow. I'll leave it at that. I wanted this episode today to be one that was filled more in line with hope. The first episode, it was giving you exposure to a lot of the pain of the past in my life. And I appreciate you being willing to sit with that reality. But I also want to give you a glimpse of the journey I've been on towards healing. And as I look at my life and where I have been in comparison to where I'm at today, it is with so much gratitude that I say I am in a much better space than I have ever been in all of my life. I want to start with going back to a situation that I shared in episode 1 in regards to the time when I injured myself by herniating 2 discs in my back. And again, I'll just mention that that was the most painful experience physically that I have ever witnessed or lived through. And I want to talk a little bit more about that experience because I'm going to use it to provide an analogy in regards to the healing journey that I have been on over the last several years. When I injured my back, it's really interesting because initially when I went to see a doctor, they did an x-ray and they told me that I was suffering from severe constipation. It's crazy that that severe constipation made it so that I could not walk. And also I was unable to sleep for several days. The position I had to be in physically was on my knees and my elbows. That was the only position that I found where I could tolerate any sense of the pain that was in my back. And after suffering for those 3 days, I did go back to the doctor and they ended up doing an MRI. And it was then that it was found out that I had herniated those discs. When it was found out that I had actually herniated discs instead of being constipated, the doctors were giving me very discouraging feedback as to my body's ability to heal. One of the things that I was told at that time was that I would never be able to run again. And for someone who, especially at that time, found an escape through running, the idea of not being able to run again was almost more than I could handle. I couldn't imagine how I was going to handle the stress in my life without being able to have that as an outlet. And so when I was told that information, I remember looking at the doctors and telling them, I'm going to prove you wrong. Instead of using their recommendations as far as going through with surgery, which I'm so grateful I did not do, I chose to go the route of physical therapy. And it did take a lot of time for my body to heal, but with intentional focus on stretching and following the program that had been laid out for me by my physical therapist, in time, my body was actually able to heal. And I wish that I could remember how much time passed between the point of injury and when I would start running again. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I eventually was able to start running again. And the miracle in that is a few years after my injury, I did actually finish a marathon. I share this with you because, first of all, I find it so amazing that the body has the capacity to heal the way that it does, especially when we are giving it the proper support that it needs to heal. But also, I'm surprised sometimes by other people and their discouragement towards us in regards to our future. When I think about my life and the journey that I have been on, I want to say that I look back with a lot of gratitude. Would I ever want to repeat what I've lived through? I can say honestly, no, but I am grateful for the things that I have been able to learn through my journey, and also for being able to overcome a lot of what I have faced. In regards to my healing, I want to kind of, with this analogy of the injury that I experienced with my back and the negative feedback that I was receiving from my doctors, I want to compare that a little bit to the Mormon Church and the situation that I found myself in. I did, acknowledge in the first podcast how promiscuous I had been as a teenager. And I wanted to give you just an idea, a little bit more in regards to how I formed such a self-loathing about myself, because when I look back at my life, this self-loathing that was created really was the biggest challenge that I had to overcome when I started working to heal myself. When I was a teenager, and as mentioned, I met with many Mormon bishops to help me through the repentance process. I was recommended to read a book that had been written by a Mormon prophet, and the title of the book is called The Miracle of Forgiveness. Now, this book, I read it from cover to cover, and I remember how terrified I was as a teenage girl in reading what was in that book. Instead of filling me with a sense of hope, it really helped reinforce this idea that I was one of the most vile people on the earth. I put into ChatGPT, because I don't have the book any longer. I wanted to see what ChatGPT would come up with when I asked what were the harmful messages in the miracle of forgiveness for a teenage girl who lost her virginity. And as I read through each of these that it came up with, it reminded me of how I formed these ideas about myself that were so inaccurate. Here's some of the things that it said, and all of these things are true. For a teenage girl, this frames her worth, meaning when she loses her virginity, as being tied almost entirely to sexual purity, suggesting that if she loses it, she's permanently damaged. And I felt that I had been permanently damaged. There's an eternal consequence because of this one choice. For a teenager, this creates fear that one mistake has ruined her spiritual future. And this side of the book is just so sad and misinformed in regards to people who have been abused. In the book, it teaches that even in cases of sexual coercion or abuse, the book implies that the victim shares responsibility. That's mind-blowing to me, but there is truth in that statement. And then this emphasis that repentance is an endless process and that it's painful. Forgiveness is framed as something extremely difficult to obtain, requiring years of suffering, humiliation, and shame. And a teenage girl could easily, believe she must carry lifelong guilt and punishment rather than healing and moving forward. I identify with everything that Chat said in regards to the miracle of forgiveness. And throughout my adult life, this was the undercurrent inside of me in regards to how I felt. And anytime there were messages that were delivered by Mormon church leaders, anytime that it was dealing with sex and sexual purity, I always felt that sense of shame inside of me because I had been sexually unclean as a teenager. I liken the Mormon church and its teachings, especially for people who were in my situation, to those like the doctors when I had hurt my back. It was not a message of hope or of belief that I could get better. It was always a message that I was broken and that, again, I was this second-class saint. Thankfully, I will say that when I got outside of Mormonism, I was able to have come into my life a couple of people who have helped me transform my life. And it didn't come through religion. With so much gratitude, one of the key people who came was my counselor. And with her help, I was able to transform how I was thinking about myself from a place of loathing to a place of love. For people who have been abused, one of the greatest challenges that we have to overcome is coming to love ourselves. When we are abused, our self-worth is severely impacted. And for me, not only was the abuse attributing to my low self-worth, but the religion that I was a part of was really reinforcing it over and over and over again. And also, in addition to that, the person that I was married to, anybody within my family who knew about my past, and most did, so many of them would reinforce the idea that it was my husband who had saved me. And so I had so many negative messages coming at me. When I started working with my counselor, one of the things that she had to help me with was coming to connect with my inner child. And I want to share just a couple of things that were really critical for me in coming to learn how to love myself, because the reality is I did not. And the first was the inner child work. Prior to my working with my counselor, I had heard about inner child work. It wasn't something that I had not heard of. And I'd listened to a few podcasts about it, but I just could not really understand what it meant to do inner child work. Given my life and how things played out, I was so disassociated and detached from the little girl that was inside of me. And through the process of counseling, I was able to start connecting with her. I will never forget this one evening when I was not feeling super good about my life. You know, counseling really took me into a dark place. Before it got light, it was dark. And this one particular evening, I was not doing well, and I had gone into the bathroom, and I was looking at myself in the mirror. And as I was looking in my eyes, somehow I caught this glimpse in my face of the little girl inside of me. And it was almost as if she was peeking out to see me. And when I saw her, I started to cry. And even talking about it creates the emotion inside that I felt. It was then that I really started to connect with the fact that there was this little girl inside of me who had really been hurt. And she was so afraid. And she was acting out as an adult. And through counseling, I learned how much my behaviors were this little girl that was acting out. And so, through the process of working with my counselor, her name is Kay. Kay helped me learn how to start parenting this little girl that was inside of me, because my own parents had not taken care of me in the way that I needed to be taken care of. They caused harm instead of causing love. And because of I raised 5 children, that whole concept of how would I want to talk to my own children was then turned to how I would talk to myself. And it wasn't something that happened immediately. It took a lot of practice and work. But I was able to get to the point where more and more I was loving the little girl that was inside of me. And it changed me in a way that has completely surprised me. Now, more than ever, I have so much compassion for what's happening on the inside of me. I'm not perfect in this area. There are still times where the old habits and old patterns from my past come out. But more often than not, there is this change inside of me where I can recognize if I'm starting to act out where the little girl is acting out. And I pay attention to what's going on that's creating this situation. And I do believe that my interactions with other people have become healthier as I have learned how to better take care of the little girl that's inside of me. Another thing that I learned how to do early on when I started the healing journey was doing what is called mirror work. For someone like myself who had grown up with a lot of negative information about who I was coming at me and me believing it, the voice inside of my mind was so negative. And I needed to learn how to change that voice. And so I started doing what is called mirror work. And mirror work is one of the most simple but powerful tools that I have learned that has helped me change my life. And what it is you look at yourself in the mirror and you speak positively to yourself. It is Louise Hay. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but Louise Hay is the one who wrote a book about this. And I read her book and it helped me learn how to do mirror work. The very first affirmation that I ever said to myself was, I approve of myself. And I put this sticky note everywhere. I put it on my computer, put it in my car, on my mirrors, on my walls. And several times a day, I was constantly saying, I approve of myself. It is amazing to me what happened as I started to do that. I started to pay more attention to my thoughts. And as I grew in my practice with mirror work, my thoughts, I would notice when they were negative, and I would take that negative thought and reword it. And I would put it into a positive, and I would put that on a sticky note, and I would recite it over and over again until that thought pattern was changed. I still do this to this day. If you were to come into my house today, you would notice sticky notes everywhere. I have them in almost every single room. And they are reinforcers to me of the positive thoughts that I want to have in my life. Every day when I wake up, I will look at myself in the mirror and I will say, Kendi, I love you. I love you so much. And I have a mirror by my computer and I'm looking at it constantly. And when I look at myself, I always say a positive affirmation. And this practice, and I've been doing it for several years now, has completely helped me transform my life. In the beginning, when I really started to notice changes within myself that were positive, I would I would always tell Kay, thank you so much for changing my life. And I would say that all the time. And there came a point where Kay stopped me and she said, Kendi, I just need to point out to you that I'm not the one that's changed your life. You are the one that's changed your life. And I was so glad that she pointed that out. Kay, just like my physical therapists who gave me tools and stretches to do, Kay was that type of guide for me with helping me to heal my mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical side. She was the one who was teaching me, but it was me who was having to do the work. And for anyone who is in that space of wanting to change their life, truly the power lies in each of us as the individual to make these changes. So often, before I got outside of Mormonism, I was looking for other people, for other individuals who had been set up as the people that would save me. It was always outside of myself. And what I have learned through my own journey, and this is me getting outside of religion to get to this point, is that truly it is myself and the work that I do that is going to save me. And it's been such a liberating process. And so I mention that because so often we are fed this idea that there are people outside of us who are going to help save us, but really it's us that must do the work to save ourselves. I want to just to kind of wrap this episode up. I want to share with you two things that I wrote. One of these I wrote 31 years ago. I was 18 at the time, and I wrote a letter to myself. At this time, this is right after I had had that meeting with the bishop who had scared me, and I was trying so hard to change my life to become that extreme Mormon woman. And it was not easy. And I was dealing with so much of just feeling so bad about who I was. So I wrote a letter to myself, trying at that time to inspire me. And one of the things that I wrote in this that I find it incredible. I wrote, remember that you will be able to help women later on in life because of these experiences. You have a divine mission here on earth. You will someday be able to speak about your trials and know that they are behind you. Oh, how I can't wait for that day. And it will happen, Kendi. I wrote, I want to read now to you what I wrote just about a year ago. And this is what I stated. It feels so good to be at this point. I am so very, very grateful for my life, for God, and how He or she is showing themselves to me. I feel their love in a way that is sustaining. While I have moments of depression, anxiety, fear, they do not consume me like the past. The light always breaks through and rescues me, and I come out with additional and often profound learning. If I could give anyone who has suffered from abuse or is in the process of leaving a high demand religion any hope, it would be that it does get better. And healing is such a reality. Instead of it being the miracle of forgiveness, it is the miracle of healing. And we have within ourselves the capacity and the ability to heal. Just as I healed physically, I have been able to heal in all areas of my life. Does it mean that things are perfect? Absolutely not. Even in what I wrote last year, I mentioned that there are still times where I have the depression, the anxiety, the fear, but they're short lived. And more often than not, my life is filled with peace, with happiness, with this sense of I know who I am. And that is my greatest hope for all of us. I truly believe that in order for the world to change, we have to change ourselves. As we change how we see and view ourselves, and as we come to love ourselves, there is a shift in how we see the world, and the world changes into a place that is filled with love. And so I share that with you, and I share the fact that even though I may not know you, I care for you. And that is one of the reasons why I have decided to put myself out there and to be transparent about my own walk through life. It truly is to help anyone who may find themselves in the space of feeling alone, just as I did for almost all of my life. If I could share just the fact that the greatest gift that I have given to myself is to take the step of faith and to step into the place that I was really afraid to step into, because it led me to the space of healing. And I want that for you. I look forward to our conversation that we're going to have next week as I introduce you to a woman that I love so much. She is my ancestor, and she is one of the big reasons why I am speaking out. And I'm going to share her story with you and give you the reason for my choosing to be known as the modern day pioneer. Thank you so much for being a part of this, for your support, and for your love. And until next week, I hope you have a beautiful day. And until then, take care.